Hello, Grace Fellowship Church. Hope you're doing well this week. Hope you're enjoying our study in the Gospel of John. Wanted to offer just some additional thoughts, and this one inspired by a question that Jake asked me after our service on Sunday. We were talking about John the Baptist, if you remember, from John chapter 1, verses 19 through 34. And it seems to be very clear there that John didn't know that Jesus was the Messiah until the moment that he saw the Spirit descend on him as a dove. It makes it very clear. John says twice, I myself did not know him in verse 31. 33, I myself did not know him. And yet, we've talked a lot about these familial connections between John and Jesus, that Mary, Jesus' mother, and Elizabeth, John's mother, were related, and therefore John and Jesus were related in some way and may have even interacted in their youth and even on into young adulthood and adulthood. So if given that Mary and Elizabeth both had clear words from the Lord, as we read in Luke chapter 1 and Luke chapter 2, about the roles that their children would play, that John would be the forerunner to the Messiah, and that Jesus was the Messiah. If those things were known within these key members of the family, how did John not know that Jesus was the Messiah? Was this information not passed along? It's a good question. I'm not really sure that I can give you a complete answer, but as I was thinking about it, here's some points to consider. First, one would be to consider how long John's parents lived after he died. You remember that Zechariah and Elizabeth were both older. There's no guarantee to know exactly how long they lived. Was John an infant when they died? Was he a toddler? We don't really know, but it could be that they died younger, and Elizabeth and Zechariah didn't have a chance to pass this information on. Maybe someone else could have, but it's hard to know. Another question would be, how much did the family talk about these prophecies about Jesus? There was some scandal surrounding the birth of Jesus. There was quite an uproar raised about even John's birth. So how much did they talk about it? Did they believe it? We see some doubt in Jesus's brothers, maybe even in Mary, in Jesus's ministry, about whether or not he really is the Messiah, whether or not he should be teaching or doing the things that he does. So how much did they really talk about it? How much did they really hold to those prophecies that they had heard? Another question might be, how long was John around his family? We're told in the other Gospels that he had gone to the wilderness. We don't know when that happened, how long he lived in the wilderness. But it could be that he was fairly removed from them. I've talked a lot about the potential for John and Jesus to have interacted. Maybe they didn't interact very much. Maybe John was off in the wilderness from a fairly young age, and they didn't talk to each other a whole lot. John was in the dark about some of these things because he was far away, because he had retreated to the wilderness in this prophetic role that he had. And it may be, we see John's later doubts where he wasn't sure about who Jesus was as the Messiah, whether or not he really was fulfilling these prophecies. Remember, John may have had more of a kingly picture of what the Messiah would look like, and maybe Jesus didn't fit in with some of those ideas that he had. And so maybe he sort of dismissed those claims about Jesus being the Messiah. I don't know. What I do know is that John seems to be very clear, the gospel writer John seems to be very clear that John the Baptist did not know Jesus until it was revealed to him. It was revealed to him as the Spirit descended on Jesus like a dove. And so with all these hypotheticals, what's something concrete we can take away? I think it's the reminder that not just with John, but with all of us, the only way that we will know and understand who Jesus is, the only way that we will see him as the Messiah and accept him as such, is if God reveals it to us. If God, by a divine and supernatural light, immediately imparted to the soul, as Jonathan Edwards calls it, as if he awakens us, or as John puts it earlier in the gospel, that to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, not of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. All God's children are born of God by his will, including John the Baptist, that no matter how much information he may have received from Elizabeth or from Mary or from his family or in any other way, it was only through the revelation of God by the power of his Spirit that John was able to see and to believe in the Messiah. And such is the same for us. If we know Christ as Messiah, if we have received him, if we have believed in his name and become children of God, it's all to his glory and to his praise alone, because he is the only one that can open our hearts and our minds to understand and to receive him. So thanks, everyone. I hope this is helpful and encouraging. I don't know that I fully answered the question, but maybe gave you some good thoughts. And if you have anything additional to add, I'd love to hear it. Thanks.